Thank you so much for staying with us. Of course, some viewpoints there on the rescheduled 2019 election, setting the tone for our discussion today on the program TMI. But first, let's meet our panelists. Three of them are here already, expecting the fourth one to join us. Let me thank from my very extreme left, Fares Okbari. Fares Okbari is a politician, a member of the PDP, a regular on our program. Fares, many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you so very much for having me.
We also have in the studio Collins Okonova, Esquire, a political analyst. Collins, many thanks for joining us on the program.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We have with us in the studio Stanley Osaze, is a member of the All Progressives Congress, also a regular on our show. Stanley, many thanks for joining us on the program.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
We're expecting Princess Roxy Ilwagwikwe to be here. We hope she gets here on time to be part of this discussion. Well, it's no longer news that the 2019 election has now been rescheduled for February 23rd and March 9, respectively, for the presidential and National Assembly election, as well as the governorship and State House of Assembly, as well as the Abuja Area Council's election. But what is the about the talks and the discussion that is ongoing on? Today on the show is agenda setting for INEC, because INEC, whether you like it or not, they are at the center of all of this. Now the election has been rescheduled. Several reasons have been advanced why this happened, but what should we expect from INEC come the rescheduled date? That's a question this morning. But we'd like to know the thoughts and views of our panelists here on the postponement of the election against the myriad of views and opinions that are coming forth on the front burner. Let me begin with Fares Okbari. Yeah, I asked this question on Saturday from our analysts that were here, what their initial reactions were when that news broke by 2:15 a.m., 2:30 a.m. on Saturday that INEC has rescheduled the election. But as at 11 p.m. Friday, there were some feelings around the country that this was going to happen. Let's get your thoughts.
Well, it's very regrettable, particularly the way the elections were postponed, that elections will be postponed just about 6 hours to the commencement of a very crucial elections that's going to define the future of this country. You know, it's going a long way to show that the independence in INEC has been compromised, and there were forces behind the postponement. It didn't just happen like that. And what the INEC was saying about logistics is just a small screen, because INEC announced these dates of these elections 2 years ago. In fact, when the Senate tried to change the sequence of elections and the dates, you know, INEC resisted vehemently and said they are in charge of fixing the date and they are going on with elections whether the Senate likes it or not. And just recently there was a video of the INEC chairman talking about the elections and that the elections have been fixed and there's nothing on earth that will change the date of the elections. Only for the chairman to come out a few hours to the commencement of the elections and say that the elections have been shifted. Now, why did they shift elections? We have on good authority that the APC, you know, and the presidency, having been scared of election, staring defeat at the face, have done everything to stagger the elections. You know, they want the elections to hold in some part of the country, whereas some other part of the country there will be no elections. Take Edo, for example. In Edo, we were at INEC, at CBN from 8 a.m. till 5 a.m. the next day. What happened was that initially they said there was no materials for the election. Then later they said they had materials, but there was no result sheet. And then later they said the result sheet, they took it to Delta State. And later on, we said, okay, go and bring it from Delta. Delta is just 1 hour drive. You say, okay, they said later in the evening, they said that they have one of the senatorial zone from Delta, they have the result sheet in Edo. You know, in all of this, we saw that there was a grand scheme to make sure that elections do not hold in some part of the country, whereas some other parts of the country, they wanted to go on with the elections. And we thank God that, you know, the resistance and the resilience of Nigerians were able to put pressure on these people to make sure that they didn't go on with that election that day in the way they wanted to go on with it, because the way they wanted to go on with it would have spelled doom for the country, and that would have caused chaos and caused some very because this elections is going to define this country. Okay. And anything goes wrong now with these elections, it's going to be something that we all will regret.
Okay, let me pause you there. Looking at the impact of this election, the expected impact of this election. Collins Esquire, let me come to you. This morning we saw a report by NAMA saying that they put structures in place for 24-hour services in all the airports in Nigeria to facilitate transportation. INEC hinged this postponement on logistics challenges. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I would align myself to some extent with what Fares has said. This whole thing appears to be a script that has been played out. For instance, the chairman of INEC, alluded to the fact that one of the reasons why the postponement became necessary was because of, weather problems. The plane could not land in certain places. Okay, so they have left that open, because by next Saturday they have no control of the weather. They can still tell you now that the weather again has not allowed the plane to land. If they find that what they have on ground is not favorable to them, they will change it again. So right now we are not even sure. They are telling you 23rd night is sacrosanct, that it was hold on the 23rd. The INEC chairman told us up till Friday night that elections will hold on Saturday morning, only for us to hear that by 2 a.m. or 2:30 a.m. elections have been postponed. So right now, and what we are finding very difficult to understand is whether this people even take into consideration the fact that they have dislocated people's lives. People have had to travel from far and wide on account of this. People even came from outside of Nigeria on account of these elections. There are international observers that came to this country hoping that after the elections on Saturday, they may go back to their countries. Now we have shifted it by 1 week. There are people one of my sons whose wedding was supposed to be on the 2nd of March. We moved it to the 9th of March, only for us to hear now that the election has been moved to 9th of March. We don't even get to that 9th of March and find that the election don't hold on that day. Or for as long as they find that it does not favor them. It's a script. I was watching the APC chairman, national chairman, at the stakeholders meeting yesterday, ranting, talking about the INEC chairman must apologize. Who doesn't know who does he think he's fooling? We all know that this whole thing is a script that is being played out. You are telling the INEC chairman you must apologize. What will apology do for us? Or what will be the value of the? So INEC chairman said to us yesterday, he said you take responsibility, and I'm wondering what's the value of that? You take responsibility, so what? Why didn't you resign? For the colossal damage that you have done to the psyche of Nigerians, and you say all you end up saying is I take responsibility. You should resign if you are a responsible man. If you know the consequences of what you have done, you should take responsibility and resign. So I take responsibility. They have told him, you announce it, nothing will happen. Heaven will not fall. We will put any date we like. That's what they told him. He said, just say you take responsibility. So I was watching the INEC, the APC chairman talking to him, and I was thinking he would go as far as to insist that now that you have caused this colossal damage to the fund, the money, the finances of this country, to the psyche of Nigerians, please can you just tender your resignation so we will know that they had no hand in it. All he ended up doing is say, you have to apologize. What is the value of the apology? So the man apologizes, and so what? The people who spent money to go to their villages to vote, what is the value of the apology to them? What about people who have to come from outside this country? What is the value of the apology to them? What about the people who have to shut down their businesses for a whole day? What is the value of the apology to them? All right, and these are just signs of desperation, and this is what makes many people to be worried about whether these elections are going to be free, fair, and credible.
Okay. Let me pursue that, Collins. I'll come to
yes. I truly wonder why some of us have become a victim to our own personal delusion. And we have failed to forget the fact that as a Nigerian, we have history. What happened in 2011 in this country when the PDP was in power? Let us not affiliate political party to the independence of INEC. What happened in 2011? Election has already commenced in places like Lagos and Zamfara, National Assembly elections, before Ataye Rijiga called the election off on the ground that they were not able to supply materials across the country. As of today, the same issue, the same scenario played differently from what happened in 2011. They want to slay or kill every members of the All Progressive Congress who are not part and parcel of INEC. So the question is, why are we trying as much as possible to bend realities and truth? This man came out publicly to tell, I want to tell you this fact. As a member of All Progressive Congress, we were ready for the election till the next morning, only to hear that the election had been postponed. So again, in 2015, what happened? We know that the timing in 2015 was different from what happened in 2019. But the PDP-led INEC, as at then, shifted the election for 6 weeks. As of today, we are talking about just a week, and we want to just make sure we kill INEC. Now, this same man who said that the professor should resign, if he's resigned by now, he's going to create more damages, because as we speak, the new person cannot be able to fit in with the current development that is on ground. So the better thing we need to do is for us to remain calm and to ensure that the elections is prosecuted from our dimension. One other thing we need to understand here is simple. Talking about it's playing script, he's playing the script. Don't you think that the INEC chairman have the right whatsoever to come up publicly to debunk any allegation or attack against this person by members of the opposition and by members of the ruling party? The national chairman of APC came out publicly to say, you must apologize. Well, this thing is very bad. Even President Muhammadu Buhari on his own refused to agree to the postponement. What else did you want? Do you know what I've noticed in the mindset of Nigerians? It's just that we are so very, very suspicious. Anything that happens, we try as much as possible to affiliate it to political influence. Whereas what we did in the past is the same thing that plays currently, and you want to kill the same persons who mistakenly acted on the basis of the fact that he was not able to convey material across the country. So if my brother, who happens to be a member of PDP, Fares Opere, is sincere to himself, let him begin to look back to history. What has happened in the past? We know what Maurice Iwu did while he was the INEC chairman in Nigeria here. We know what happened. As of today, you are crying here and there, saying that they have agenda, they have this. Who brought all the wicked agenda to the Nigerian politics? Was it not your same party? We know what is going on in this country. So let us be objective, let us be sincere to ourselves when we analyze issues that borders on social phenomena and politics.
All right, in the build up to this election, there were stories around social media, but one of them that was well authenticated was a story of about 70 bags of thumb-printed ballot papers sacks in Kano. Where there was also similar stories in some other parts of the country. And I mean, then look at that as an issue. Then the burning down of some INEC offices, that was, I mean, all over in the news media. INEC chairman went on to say there were already plans by politicians to circumvent the process, and this explains part of the reasons why they had serious logistical challenges. Mike Igini, for example, one of the resident electoral commissioner, talked about the colossal, issues they needed to now deal with to be able to put things in the right direction for this election to hold. Let me get your take on that, Fares here.
All of these that you just mentioned were orchestrated by the APC to frustrate the elections. If you look at what they did, they target areas where the PDP has its stronghold. Edo, Benue, Delta, Rivers, Ekiti, and so many others, Abia, Anambra, areas where they know that the PDP were expecting to have a lot of votes. They were trying to frustrate the elections in this area so that these elections will be reconducted on another day, where they cannot deploy security operatives from other parts of the country to those areas for the purpose of rigging the elections. This is being put together by a party that is so unpopular, by a government that has failed woefully, that the only option for the government right now is to perpetrate this evil plan of trying to rig the elections and put itself in power. Because right now, in a free and fair election, Buhari will not score 5 million votes across the country. And we all know this. He knows. He's talking about Maurice Iwu. Was he a member of the PDP up to 2 years ago? So when you say, oh, the PDP did DDP, you were a member of the PDP up to 2 years ago. So before you start now pointing fingers because you are now on the other side, it shows your personality as a person. But I don't want to deal on that. Let's stick to the issue. The main issue here is that all of this burning of INEC office, trying to sabotage elections, because you see, the elections, whether INEC as an independent body, called an independent body or not, does not function alone as an independent body. It relies on other agencies of government, particularly government under the federal government agencies. For example, INEC needs the Air Force to convey materials. INEC needs the CBN, which is under the federal government, to safeguard materials. INEC needs the police, which under the federal government to protect this material. So whether you like it or not, INEC does not do everything alone. INEC also needs the agencies of other agencies of government to function, and these agencies of government are agencies of government that have that the presidency has strong hold over. Let me give you another example. Now we said INEC said it's logistical problems. Who is in charge of logistics in the election? Go to the INEC website and check who is in charge of logistics. It's the same Amina Zakari, who is the cousin of the president, that is in charge of logistics. So what they did was that they tried to use this logistics, frustrate these strongholds of the PDP, then restagger the elections, do some in some states where they think that they will win, and then come back to these states where they are expecting the PDP to win, and deploy massive security in these areas, do the Oshun agenda, replay it here, and then announce fictitious numbers for themselves. Why on earth would you go into an election without the most important document for the election, which is the Form E8, the result sheet? How would you even consider going to election? In Niger State, the two senatorial zones where the PDP is very strong, there were no ballot papers. And that was 3 hours to the elections. And the same person who got the contract for the printing of PVCs, for the printing of supply of card readers, was also running that election in the same states. And now, let me also tell you, if you look at the records, if you go back and look at records, at least you do your independent journalistic work, go to the records, ask INEC, of every 5 registered voter in Edo that was registered, 2 of them did not get their PVCs. In some areas, as much as 3 in Lagos did not get their PVCs. In some areas in the east, as much as 4 of them did not get their PVCs. In Kaduna South, out of the 5 registered voters, only 1 got PVCs, which means systematically a lot of people have been self-charged even before the elections. And these are all plans by the APC because they are afraid of these elections. They are afraid of the will of the people, because Nigerians are tired. You cannot expect a country where you've come and you've promoted poverty to the high heavens for people to still vote for that party. And what they are doing right now is trying to disenfranchise a lot of people, stagger the elections, do the elections, and have reruns in other areas, and so that they can announce fictitious numbers for themselves. That's the only option for them.
Okay, so we keep our fingers crossed, because some of the things you're saying now we cannot independently verify them, but that's just your thoughts and your views. Collins Esquire, let me bring you in here. It raised one issue which the INEC chairman also alluded to during the stakeholders meeting, which is that a candidate of the ruling party in Niger State also got a contract to supply some of this material. Yes. But the INEC chairman said this same man has been working with INEC since 2011. So it wasn't just a business relationship that just started.
And then he went on to clash of interest. How can a participant in an election be given contract to produce materials for that same election? How do you do that? So he has been a contractor to INEC since 2011. Now that he has an interest in the elections by way of being a candidate in the election, is this still proper to award him contract to print ballot papers, to print card readers?
Sensitive materials.
Very sensitive electoral materials. Is that right? Now, one of the things I also noticed on Saturday, which gives proper credence to the stories that are flying around, that all of these things have been orchestrated by the APC. I was wondering, the president went to the polling booth at 8 o'clock along with his aides. You mean that the president did not know? He had not heard it on TV, had not heard his transistor radio.
I didn't see that. I just saw people.
He went to the polling booth.
No, I didn't see that. Was it reported by any?
It was reported, sir.
Was it reported?
Yes, it was reported, and I'm wondering. So what is the meaning of that? The president not here on TV. He don't hear the transistor radio was not working in Katsina. So this whole thing was to give the lie, to say, you know what, I didn't even know. I even went to the polling booth to cast my vote, only to find out that the election had been cancelled. That was taking a joke too far, for God's sake. All right, and we are not kids. Well, this is the same president since he became president. INEC has conducted elections, and all of them have been inconclusive. It was in this Buhari regime that we began to hear of inconclusive elections. All right, and now this is the first time that it's going to conduct a nationwide election, and they have botched it. What confidence do we have in a man like this? What confidence do you have in a government like this? All right, that is the first time that you are conducting a nationwide election, and this is what we get. In fact, this 23rd that they are talking about, we have to pray, because it is almost, from all the logistic problems that they have enumerated, it is almost impossible for them to conduct a credible election. Watch it. You are going to find that in most cases they are going to stagger the election, because this is what they want to do. This is what benefits them, so that they can deploy forces to those areas and then hold those states down and man everybody one-to-one with security personnel, like they did, like the Osun experience, and they did in Ekiti. You watch it and see, because they know, this government knows that it does not have the acceptance of the Nigerian people. You cannot impoverish the people, make Nigeria the headquarters of poverty in the world, and you expect me to vote for you when I know that Nigeria is a rich country. What is the meaning of that? And then you want to impose yourself on the people, and then you cannot conduct a free and fair election. You have been boasting you will make sure that the elections are free and fair. If not for the intense interest that the international community has shown in these elections, they would have done it anyhow. And they will tell you, go to courts. They will do as they have done in Osho, as they have done in Ekiti. They will do it, and that's the imprimatur of Uchibole. They say go to court. And then after that, then you know that they have already cowed the judiciary. They have already intimidated the judiciary. So the judiciary now will bow also to their whims. They have dealt with every sector of the Nigerian state in such a way that we need to be delivered from this government.
Okay, let me pursue that.
Yes.
Yeah,
what we really need to understand here is very simple. The truth of the matter is, Faris Operet said that the operational woman in INEC happens to be the relative of President Muhammadu Buhari. Until today, they have not been able to establish the kind of correlation that exists between Mr. President. Excuse me now.
Gentlemen, let's
between Mr. President and this woman. And again, let's go back to history. You are talking about impoverishing the country. Let's look at where we were coming from as a country. Look at the situation on things on ground before the run-up of 1999 till date. President Jonathan Younger cousin came out publicly to say he collected the sum of $40 million to take care of militants. And in an economy where you collected the sum of $40 million, you expect that economy to still be strong after you have looted the economy for more than 16 good years. Go and look at $2 billion collected by Dasuki. To date, people like you are still saying that they must pay him. Whereas Bezani Alese Madueke, the then oil minister, have refused to return back to Nigeria because of the huge amount of resources she stole from the economy. And as of today, you want to blame President Muhammadu Buhari and the APC for the woes of Nigerians? Let us be sincere to ourselves. What has happened in the past? Then let's go to the election proper. The truth of the matter is very simple. What makes you think that you win Edo? You say Edo is your stronghold, and you lost the election in 2016 here in Edo State. What else are you looking for? What else are you soliciting for? Do you think you can come out and begin to use the media to truncate the thinking ability of Nigerian people? We already know where we are coming from. We cannot go back to Egypt. Let me tell you something again. What happened in the power sector? $16 billion collected under the PDP administration for the past 16 years. You accuse me of being a member of the PDP, yes, but I was not part and parcel of this kind of development that transpires within the purview of the party. Let's tell ourselves the simple truth. If in a same society, PDP has no right to campaign, they have no right to campaign whatsoever. It is the truth. Let us know where we are coming from. And again, he talked about security agency working for this. The question you asked me, didn't answer it. You talked about ballot paper. Printed ballot paper. And let me react to that. As he accused the security agency of working with the APC. He accused the security agency of doing everything to ensure that they protect the interest of the APC. And I want to tell him this. If he's sincere to himself, if the security agency is working for the APC as is claimed, do you think the security agency will bust such materials? Will come out open to say we've seen materials that is being spearheaded by the APC to rig the election. The security agency, the police, was the one who busted that material according to the video we saw on social media. That is to tell you that the APC have no correlation with that. If some party faithful or some individual wants to do everything possible to show to the world that they are overzealous party member, that is not, there's no way you can correlate such issue with the party in itself. Then let's be sincere to ourselves. If we know where we are coming from, we should be able to know where we are going to. Now, if you have removed those huge amount of resources from the economy, what do you expect in the economy? Let us go back to history. The then Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, stated publicly, and I quote, that the government of the day under the PDP administration has refused to save money. Please save money. The rate at which the economy is going, if this economy falls into recession, there is no way the economy will bounce back. But what happened under your administration? They're going to loot the money, and as of today, you want to blame Buhari for these 16 years of your lawlessness? Let's be sincere to ourselves. Again, what did the then CBN governor say? The Emir of Kano, after the sum of $49 billion was discovered missing in the NNPC coffer, which they later reconciled, and the former Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, agreed to the fact that it was the sum of $20 billion that was missing from the economy. Ask yourself a simple question. If $20 billion is removed from the economy, what do you expect in the future? The then CBN government stated, and I quote, the rate at which this economy is being looted, if we fail to write it now, this country will fall into a recession that we cannot come back from again. And now you want to blame the APC administration for this orchestrated criminality that has been perpetrated by your own party? Let's be sincere to ourselves. Right. As a Nigerians, we must know where we are coming from. Right. You are only blaming Buhari right now because the failure and the looting of your administration is now manifesting today, and you expect us to say we want to remove the government. Let's give President Buhari and the APC the opportunity. They give to you. And again, sir, let me submit. I want to tell you something. We know where we are coming from. The word reading, who introduced it to Nigerian politics? It was PDP. We know what happened that day. When I said it just that you have refused to debunk it. So the truth is, let us be sincere to ourselves and let us really take things the way it is. Okay. Instead of people to accept the truth, you begin to doctor videos, you begin to carry out different propaganda.
Let's pause you there. Well, if you just join us, it's still TMI Monday. Looking at the rescheduled 2019 elections, one major thing that is on the front burner right now is that INEC says no more campaigns, all campaigns banned. But the political parties are saying with 1 week, they have a lot to do, they have a lot to achieve. What are your thoughts, gentlemen, on INEC's banning of further campaigns between now and Saturday?
Well, before I go there, let me quickly say that, I've observed that with all due respect to my APC friends, that, the ignorance, from most of, the APC and supporters of Buhari is legendary. Going back to what he said about history, I'm not sure how old you were in 1999, but if you go back, you know where this country was in between 1999 when PDP took over government and where we are, where we left the country in 2015 when Buhari took over. And if you must know, just in this December, we had the MBS releasing their statistics that 20-point-something million Nigerians are unemployed. That's the highest in the history of Nigeria. Now, going back to your question, which was on the issue of
banning of campaigns.
Banning of campaigns. It's all a script being orchestrated by the APC because they don't want the campaigns to continue. They don't want these elections to go on. Now, the Constitution of Nigeria is very clear on political parties and how they operate. And it says that all campaigns must end 48 hours to an election. So if you postpone an election, for 1 week, then it's fair that you allow the political parties to postpone also, to extend their campaigns, because the Constitution is very clear. The Constitution says clearly that campaigns should end 24 hours to an election. And even when the elections were postponed in 2015 because of security issues, campaigns continued until 24 hours to the 48 hours to the election. So why in this case are they asking people not to campaign? Because they know that even this postponement of this election, which was orchestrated by the APC, will be used to campaign against them. And the people are only angry. If you go out and sample, I saw you playing some videos just now before this event. Look at what the people were saying. These are ordinary Nigerians. Those are not politicians, they're not members of the PDP. Look at hear their opinion about the postponement. The people are angry with the government because they know that the Independent National Electoral Commission cannot on its own just come out and postpone the election without some forces pushing it from behind.
From 2011?
No, just hold on there.
Continue.
Yeah.
Without some forces pushing it from behind.
Yeah.
Those forces are the same ones who are now orchestrating that the campaign should cease so that people will have nothing to, Nigerians will have nothing to listen to anymore. They will just go and they'll be cajoled on election day to do what they want. But we will resist it. And I want to thank Nigerians because the spirit of Nigerians in these elections is very strong. The people have come out openly to resist a government that has promoted poverty, a government that is only known for poverty, a government that believes that you are only a good Nigerian if you are a poor Nigerian. And that's a mentality that has promoted this kind of situation where we see ourselves. Because you cannot come out and think that everybody should be poor for you to have a good nation. No. In the US, you have rich people. In Russia, you have rich people. In China, China has the highest number of billionaires today. So why is it that Nigeria, this government came in with the agenda of thinking that, if I make people poor, that's when the country will believe that they're fighting corruption. Can't you fight corruption and allow people to be rich? How many people have this government made rich? Today, your $500 that you have in your account, your $100,000 that you have in your account today is worth about $300. The same $100,000 that you have 4 years ago was worth over $500. So, which means invariably today you are poorer than you were 4 years ago. Even he is poorer than he was 4 years ago.
What makes you think so?
So I'm telling you because of the money. No matter what you have right now, let me submit. No matter what you have right now. If you have a car right now, that's your car. If you are driving Mercedes-Benz and you bought that Mercedes-Benz for $1 million, that Mercedes-Benz was $600,000 4 years ago. If you are buying, if you spend $10,000 to fuel your car in a month, now you would have spent $6,000 to fuel it 4 years ago, which means you have lost $4,000. You lose $4,000 on every 10,000 you spend on petrol, which was not what it was 4 years ago. So, which means whether you like it or not, you have become poorer. Nigerians have become poorer. That's the point. And this government continues to promote poverty as an agenda, and that is where the government has to go.
Okay, let me pause you there. Collins Esquire, you want to build on that, on this issue of campaign stoppage, collection of PVC. Those are the two key things I really want to know.
We are wondering, what's the point? You postpone an elections, and then, so there's a week interval. And the Electoral Act says that campaigns must stop 48 hours before an election. The INEC has no power to stop political parties from campaigning, all right, during this intervening period, until 48 hours to the election. Now, what's the point? Why are you banning parties from campaigning? Well, what point do you seek to achieve? All right, so now, what we know that has been done is that when you a few hours to the elections, all parties ought to have spent their money, mobilizing their agents and everything. And whatever money you have spent on that Saturday has entered voicemail. It has entered voicemail. So now we are going to have to get fresh money. So the whole idea is to weaken the opposition, because if this happens, the APC can generate money from government. All right, then the opposition parties don't have. So the whole idea is that's why they waited until Saturday morning. All right, when they were now sure that by this time all parties would have disbursed money to their agents. So by this time now, if you cancel the election, you weaken them. And this was done deviously. What we are advising the government and INEC is to realize that they are dealing with human beings, and they are Nigerians as well. All right, they should have compassion. This government has wickedness as agenda. Wickedness. All right? You just look through all the time that Buhari has been the president of this country. There's been wickedness.
There are those who will disagree with you on that.
Okay, people can disagree. This is my opinion. This is my opinion. This man agrees with me. That's my opinion. I don't care whether you disagree.
Continue.
I don't care whether you disagree. People agree with me. And that's my opinion. I'm saying wickedness on ground in this country. Since Buhari became president, when we had these cattle headers, butchering people all across the nation, when did you hear the president say anything? He said nothing. And only for him to come out once and say, you mean that the IG didn't go to Benue? I told him to go to Benue. So he knows, he didn't know. And this is our president, who ought to be getting security reports on a daily basis, or even on an hourly basis. He claimed that he didn't know that the IG did not go to Benue State. And he said so publicly, without any out of shame or remorse. And when he got to Benue, do you know what he asked them? How are the cattle headers? How are the cattle headers? That's what he asked them.
But they had a stakeholders meeting with them.
Yeah, so he asked them, how are the cattle headers? Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
We are looking at wickedness of this that has been propagated by this government. And they came in on the bandwagon of propaganda. They brought in all kinds of propaganda. Now I heard the Minister of Information, what's his name?
Lai Mohammed.
Lai Mohammed. Okay. I heard him. He said that this postponement was orchestrated by the PDP. I mean, what? I don't want to use the word insanity. How does PDP have the power to orchestrate a postponement of elections? How does PDP have the power? He said because they know that this PDP saw defeat staring them in the face. So PDP orchestrated the postponement. I mean, what? Even to a fool, that statement does not make any sense.
Okay, let's confirm that. Let me call Collins. I'm
saying what we are saying, sir. It is the APC government under whom the INEC operates is the only one that has the power to authorize or to sanction the postponement of the election, and they will do that only on the basis of the fact that they have found that defeat is everywhere you go. Even I got TVC. TVC is a station owned by Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and they were sampling opinion of people, their reactions on about this postponement in Gombe State, and the people on the streets were unanimous in the fact that this time around, even those of us who were not going to vote on Saturday, we will now go and vote. We will vote out this government. Okay. All right. And they don't know. You see, in 2015, let me just land on this. Okay. In 2015, President Jonathan postponed the elections. The APC alleged that it was because President Jonathan saw defeat in the face. All right. And he claimed that it was on the basis of security reasons. All right. So now they are falling into the same hole. They are there now. They have seen it clearly. And we know, every move they make, because I belong to civil society, and we know what all the moves they are making. I am a stakeholder in this I can have my time with yours. I can have too much for PDP and I have no remorse, no regret about it. I can accept PDP as a party and I don't have to explain to you I'm a civil society stakeholder. I don't have to belong to the PDP. Even if I belong to PDP, it's not a sin. And it is righteous.
Let me proceed.
It is a sin to belong to PDP.
My time is up. Yes, Stanley.
First and foremost, I want to really
remember the two key issues: the banning of campaign, and no collection of PVCs by INEC.
I want to clarify some issues.
Let's stay on course.
My brother Fares said something that we know the situation of the economy in 1999 before PDP took over and the way they left it in 2015. Now, I want to make it clear to him. Before 1999, the highest amount of fuel sales was Abacha in general. Sani Abacha and Abdul Salam Abubakar did not sell our fuel more than 24 to 30 naira per liter. But when the PDP came in, it was even the Obasanjo administration that said a man that can buy a bottle of beer at the rate of 200 and something naira can buy fuel at the rate of 100 and something naira. Even when Obasanjo was leaving power, we know how much he plays fuel. Not until when the most respected President Muhammad Musa Yar'Adua of blessed memory returned back the fuel to the rate at 65 naira per liter. And the VAT, which was increased to 10%, was returned back to 5% by the Yar'Adua administration. And again, let's begin to understand where we are coming from. When we are quoting figure, what about the economy? Before PDP took the economy, in 1999, if you want to buy the bag of rice was about 3,000 naira, 4,000 naira. Yes, I want to bring it in 3,000, 4,000. But when PDP was leaving power, it was about 9,000 9,000 naira. And as of today, we know that because of the negativity that or the way in which you plunge the economy into the backwater of economic decadence, things are skyrocketing. Things are skyrocketing on a daily basis. We have 16,000 naira, 17 as the case has
gone down. The price has gone down.
Yeah, listen, it hasn't gotten down, but we must know where we are coming from. What have you done to the economy in the past? That should be the basis of our discussion.
Okay, let's
go to the issue
of banning of campaign.
Good.
Not collection.
It was even the PDP that came out publicly before the campaign started, and you see they want to ring the election. President Buhari is not campaigning. President Buhari is not campaigning. Then the man started campaigning. He passes through the 36 state. As we speak, PDP has not been able to cross the 36 state in this campaign. You can imagine, instead of him to begin to tell Nigerians what he will do, you are monitoring President Buhari. And I so much know Buhari. Buhari have never mentioned Atiku's name all through this campaign. He is telling Nigerians what he has done and what he's going to do for the people. Now let's look. The other statement you said that the PDP, the APC is planning to rig or to do one or two things. I want to state clearly that even Perez confirmed the statement from the initial communication. He said when the election wanted to start, they said material was here, that the other material was in data state. Instead of them to allow the election to play, they decided to look for a way to ensure that they stopped it so that the election can take place simultaneously. Is that not a confirmation to the statement raised? So the truth of the matter is simple. Okay. Let us know where we are coming from, so then we can know where we are going to. And again, let me speak.
Yes, you're speaking. Please round up now.
Yes,
my time is up.
And again, as a people, we must learn something. If you under your dispensation, you were able to loot huge amount of money, and you expect, you are saying that there should not be multiplier effect of what you have done to the current administration. Now let me tell you something. If you collected in the power sector, we know what happened, $16 billion that you have not been able to dispute to date. Under Obasanjo stated it categorically clear under his book written by word. He said the amount of money stolen by Atiku is enough to take care of 400 million persons in 400 years. The same Obasanjo is telling us that we have to be
careful so that we don't turn the whole.
The book is there. Obasanjo wrote it.
We have to be careful so we don't turn this discussion into campaign. As you are aware, INEC has banned campaign.
It's not a campaign.
Let's focus on the issue. I asked a question on the banning of campaigns by INEC and then the banning of collection of PVCs by INEC. I want to get your thoughts on it because I'm concluding this.
Yes, and I want to tell you something. Yeah. What was the response of the APC when this ban was placed? If the PDP are saying they have right to campaign, the APC are saying they have rights to campaign as well. Have you ever seen an APC man or the president or the leadership of the APC coming out to say no, the campaign is over, let us not campaign? They know. Even the both party wants to campaign. If what we are advising the PDP is this: tell Nigerians what you intend doing. Don't begin to placate the intellectual logic of Nigerians. Tell us what you want to do, and we have our own right to tell Nigerians what we want to do. That should be the gentleman.
Let's conclude our discussion.
The next election.
Yes, let's conclude this discussion on just one more question, a minute each, to get your final thoughts. What do you expect from INEC come Saturday? We have the first tranche or the first part of the rescheduled election date, presidential and National Assembly election. What do you expect, Fares?
I'll use my 1 minute first of all, use 30 seconds to respond to what he said just now. In 1999, when President Olusegun Obasanjo and Atiku came in, they met a government that was non-existent because the government of Sani Abacha, which President Muhammadu Buhari was a member of that government, the petroleum minister in charge of petroleum funds, had borrowed so much that the country was owing huge amount of money. The government of Obasanjo and Abacha paid the debt. It was the first time any country, Obasanjo and Atiku, paid that debt. It was the first time any African country had paid its debt. They not only paid, they cleared the whole debt. Right now, in the last 3 years, the president of Muhammadu Buhari has borrowed over 11 trillion naira. Over 11 trillion in 3 years. That is far more than the country borrowed from 1960 to 2015 in 3 years.
And there's nothing on the ground to pay for the
Your 1 minute is up now. Your 1 minute is up. But you say it's 1 minute.
Now, what I expect from INEC is to show to the world that they are independent, to prove to Nigerians that they are independent, to eschew any form of intimidation by the APC, because the APC as it is right now, cannot win any election in Nigeria.
Okay, so
all they can do is intimidate, intimidate the police, and intimidate Nigeria.
I pause you there. College Esquire.
I would like Mahmoud Yakub to know that history is being written, and for him to realize that after all of this, he will leave that office, and all that Nigerians will remember him for will be the things that he did while he was in office. Okay. I want to urge him to resist every pressure that whoever is putting on him, and to do this work to the best of his conscience and the best of his ability, and to let Nigerians know that INEC can deliver on the promises that they have made. All right, we do not want to see a replica of the APC promises in INEC promises. APC promises are all promises cancelled. We don't want to see those promises in INEC again. INEC make promises and are unable to keep the promises.
Okay, thank you.
I want Mahmoud Yakub to remember that history.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
It's so painful that Fares is not a good student of history. The same. I want to react before I continue. Yes, it's so painful that Fares is not a good student of history. The Paris Club money that you were talking about was cancelled in most virtually all Africa states. Listen now, let me submit. You are using my time. It was cancelled by almost all African states by the Western world. So if you are coming out to say Obasanjo clear it, let me submit now. You are not contesting. If you are not saying Obasanjo article the regime cleared it, you have been economical with the truth. And again, hold on now. You want to ensure that you scoff woman. See, you have been economical with the truth. Let's be sincere to ourselves. In this country that we are in today, your party, yourself, and others have no right to campaign because what you have done. And now, what we expect from INEC is very simple. INEC should ensure that it maintains all level of independence. We knew what the PDP did in the past, while they were using INEC, the security agency, to intimidate people, while in the Ekiti State Fire State were like God. But as of today, we expect INEC and the security agency to maintain all sense of sincerity so that no party faithful from whatsoever divide should be intimidated. And we need a fair election.
Thank you, gentlemen. Fares Okpara, many thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Collins Konofa Esquire, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Stanley Osaze, thank you for coming. This is TMI Monday, extraying all that has transpired in the last couple of days. But the feeling is that INEC should allow political parties to continue their campaign for 48 hours before the election. But I'm sure Professor Mahmoud Yakubu has reasons for the ban. Whether that will change today, we don't know, so let's not jump the gun. Nigerians need to realize that this is a very trying moment. In fact, in President Muhammadu Buhari's press release after the postponement of the election, he said that this is a very trying moment for the country. And we must realize that as a people, and that means irrespective of what has happened, if you believe in this country, you must come out and exercise your franchise. Don't be discouraged. Don't show apathy to the election. Because if you vote, good. But if you don't vote, you are even a bigger and a greater threat to the peace and progress of this country. Because, as they say, a people get a government that they deserve. And if you don't come out to do anything, whatever happened, you accept it, and it will stay with you for the rest of your life. But I believe that Nigerians are wiser now. Nigerians are smarter now. Nigerians are more informed now. They will all come out and do the needful on Saturday by exercising their civic right.